You'll love mindful moments.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a deep dive for your mind, offering a refreshing perspective on everything from science and philosophy to history and art,
Wow.
all in under 20 minutes.
That's great.
Yeah?
So if you're ready to nurse your mind on the go, check out Mindful Moments via the link in the show notes. Trust me, you won't regret it.
It seems like everywhere you turn these days, you hear about self-improvement, you know? Like you got to constantly be analyzing every thought, every feeling, always striving to be better.
Yeah.
But what if, and this is kind of radical, what if there's a more, I don't know, stable, a more freeing way to approach living a good life? What if instead of looking inward all the time, you looked outward, tried to understand some of the fundamental realities that we all share as humans?
That is an interesting thought. Challenging that kind of prevailing narrative that we all have to keep pushing ourselves all the time to be better and better and better.
Right. Like maybe by understanding some of those bedrock human experiences, we can, I don't know, gain a little bit more clarity, maybe even ease up on the pressure a little bit. And that's kind of what we're going to be diving into in this deep dive.
I like it. Sounds intriguing.
Yeah. So we've got a collection of writings here. Originally, they were radio talks that were later compiled into a book. And they tackle some pretty, I don't know, universal human experiences. Like, think about that feeling you get, that gut feeling when you see something that's just plain unfair.
Yeah. It's really fascinating, isn't it? That kind of universal awareness that we all have of some kind of, I don't know, moral standard. I mean, you see it across cultures, you see it across history, these basic ideas about fairness, honesty, treating people right.
Right. It's like there's some kind of shared understanding of what's right and wrong.
What does that tell us? That's the question.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we're going to do here is not, give you a 5-step plan or anything. It's more about exploring these concepts, see if understanding them can offer kind of a fresh perspective, and hey, maybe even help you feel a little less pressure to constantly be, bettering yourself.
Right. Instead of being trapped in your own head all the time.
Yeah. Like what if instead of endless introspection, just thinking about yourself, analyzing yourself all the time, what if we tried to shift that focus a little bit outwards?
Right.
And, what if we tried to understand our shared human nature, this kind of underlying moral law that might actually give us a more solid footing in life?
Okay, so I'm looking at the first piece here, and it talks about this law of nature. And when you hear that phrase, it's easy to think about physics or biology, like the laws of gravity or something. But this is something different.
It is. It's not about the laws that govern the physical world. It's not about, how planets move or how cells divide. It's more about, the unwritten rules of human behavior, the rules that we all kind of expect each other to follow. Think about it. You see it all the time. Like when you hear kids arguing on the playground, they're always saying things like, that's not fair, or they started. It's like, even at that young age, they have this basic understanding of how we're supposed to treat each other. Yeah, it's so true. Like when someone cuts in line in front of you, it's not just annoying. You actually feel a sense of like injustice.
Exactly.
It's like they violated some, I don't know, universally understood code of conduct.
Right. And that's basically what this law of nature is all about. It's the idea that there is this inherent sense of decent behavior that we all share, that it's self-evident. You don't need to sit down and have someone explain it to you. And the author here argues that if we didn't have this shared understanding, then all of our judgments about things like war or injustice, they would be meaningless. I mean, how could you even say that an aggressor is wrong if there wasn't some common agreement on what right looks like?
That is a really powerful point, because if morality was just a matter of personal preference, like your favorite color or something, then criticizing someone's actions would just be absurd, right?
It would. It would be like saying, well, I don't like your taste in music, therefore you're a bad person.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't make sense.
And the thing is, we all do it. We all hold other people to this standard. But when it comes to ourselves, oh boy, we're quick to make excuses.
Oh yeah, we're the best at rationalizing our own behavior.
The mental gymnastics we go through. I was stressed. I didn't have time. I was tired.
Right.
The excuses are endless.
It's amazing how creative we can get.
Right. But, and our sources point this out, the very fact that we make excuses actually shows that we believe in this law. If we didn't believe in some standard of good behavior, then why would we even bother trying to explain away our bad behavior? You know what I mean?
That's a really good point. If it didn't matter, we wouldn't bother.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got this law of human nature, this sense of right and wrong that seems to be baked into us. But it's not just about how we behave, because we know we don't always live up to it. So what is it then? Where does it come from?
Right. It's not just a description of what we do, because we all know that we fall short all the time. And it's not just some wish list of how we want other people to behave so that we can have an easier life either.
Right, right.
It's something more than that.
Yeah.
And that leads to a really fundamental question. Where does this inherent sense of morality come from? If it's not just about our actions, what is it?
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting, because our sources, they lay out a couple of different perspectives on this, on where this moral law comes from. And one perspective is what you might call the materialist viewpoint. It's the idea that everything, and I mean everything, came about through random chance, just atoms bumping into each other for billions of years.
Yeah. It's the idea that matter, physical stuff, is all that there is. And that somehow, through just an incredibly long series of accidents, life emerged. And then consciousness. And eventually us. And from that perspective, you could argue that morality is just a useful adaptation, something that evolved because it helped early humans cooperate and survive.
Right, right. Like from a purely evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense.
It does.
But then our sources, they present another perspective, which is more of a religious viewpoint. This idea that behind the universe, behind all of this physical stuff, there's something else, something more akin to a mind, something with awareness, with purpose.
Right. And from this viewpoint, that law of human nature that we've been talking about, it's not just some random byproduct of evolution. It's a reflection of this underlying intelligence. It's like a set of principles that are woven into the very fabric of reality.
It's like there's a blueprint,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like an architect who designs a building and they embed a blueprint within that building. And that blueprint guides everything, how it's built, how it functions.
Yeah. And one of the things that our sources point out as kind of a piece of evidence for this second view is the fact that we humans, we have what they call inside information. We don't just observe humanity from the outside.
We are human. We experience it directly.
Exactly. And so because of that, we understand something about morality that someone observing from the outside never could.
It's a really interesting point. Imagine someone studying humans, but only from the outside, like an anthropologist on some, faraway planet, observing a species they'd never encountered before. They could see our actions, they could record our behaviors,
Right.
but they would never have access to that internal sense of obligation that we feel, that feeling of ought that often conflicts with what we actually end up doing.
Yeah, I think it's like trying to figure out the rules of a game, But
Okay.
you can only watch people playing. You can't see the rule book. You can't talk to the players. So you might see the moves they make, but you'd never really understand the point of the game, the goal, the strategy. You might find similar explorations of these kinds of insightful ideas on platforms like Mindful Moments, an AI audiobook analysis YouTube channel that really delves into works that encourage this kind of reflection.
It's exactly that underlying logic that drives everything. And that's what's so unique about our awareness of this moral law, this feeling that we ought to do certain things.
Right.
It's not something you can just observe from the outside. It's an internal experience.
Yeah.
And it suggests there's something more going on here than just the physical world that we can see and touch.
Yeah.
It points towards some kind of guiding influence, something beyond the purely material.
Okay, so that brings us back to this idea of something behind the universe, a director, a guide, whatever you want to call it. But the point is, this something is more akin to a mind than just, inert matter. Because it's hard to imagine rocks and water and gas, just physical processes issuing moral commands.
It is. It's like, how does a rock tell you, to be honest?
Right, exactly. And, our sources, they acknowledge that this isn't the same thing as the fully developed idea of God that you find in, say, Christianity or Islam.
Right.
But they do say that the existence of this universal moral law, it at least points us toward the idea that there is some kind of purposeful intelligence at work behind the scenes. And that this intelligence, it's deeply concerned with things like fairness and honesty and truthfulness.
That's a really powerful thought. when you really stop and think about it.
It is. So basically, even if you don't subscribe to any particular religion, the very fact that we as humans, we debate right and wrong, we feel guilt when we violate our own moral standards, that tells us something pretty profound about who we are and about the universe that we live in. It's like, I don't know, it's like we're all picking up the same moral broadcast, even if our reception's a little fuzzy sometimes.
I like that. That's a great analogy
Mhm.
because it really does feel like that sometimes, doesn't it? Like there's this signal out there, this moral signal, and we're all trying to tune into it. And sometimes we get it clear and sometimes we don't, but it's always there.
Always there. Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of ground here, but to kind of pull it all together for everyone listening, I think one of the biggest takeaways from this deep dive is this: that maybe, just maybe, your pursuit of a better life, becoming a better person, it shouldn't always be this inward-facing journey of constant self-critique.
Right. Maybe we've been looking in the wrong direction.
Maybe. Because the thing is, when you start to understand the fundamental principles of human nature, when you understand that there's this universal moral law that you already instinctively recognize, it can give you a whole new framework for navigating life, for making decisions. And maybe, just maybe, it can take some of the pressure off. Because instead of feeling like you're constantly failing to live up to some impossible standard, you can start to see yourself as part of something bigger, something guided by principles that are bigger than just your own little anxieties and desires.
And that can be so freeing to realize that you're not alone in this, that there's this shared reality, this common ground of decency that we all stand on.
Exactly. Okay, so we've been at this for a while now. I think it's time to wrap things up.
Yeah, I think so.
But before we go, I just want to say to everyone listening, if you found this deep dive thought-provoking, if it got you thinking, please consider subscribing to the show for more explorations of these kinds of insightful ideas.
Yeah, and don't forget to share this with anyone else you think might find it valuable.
Yes, please do. We'll also include a link in the show notes where you can purchase the source material if you're interested in digging deeper into these ideas on your own.
Absolutely.
And finally, just one last thought to leave you with. In a world that's constantly telling us to evaluate ourselves, to analyze ourselves, to improve ourselves, could it be that a deeper understanding of our shared human realities, this inherent sense of right and wrong that we've been talking about, could that offer a more grounded and ultimately more fulfilling path? Something to ponder.
It definitely is.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time.
Take care.